Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis, brought to you by the RVMH Hall of Fame and the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana. We learned today, getting back with Marcus Freeman after a bye week, there are no off weeks during the football season. Notre Dame's coming off of a bye week.
Yeah, a bye week, which was Marcus Freeman's way of saying still a lot of work to be done, still a lot of purpose left in this season, and that's the way that Notre Dame approached the practice field last week as they worked through Wednesday afternoon, and then the guys got Thursday, Friday, Saturday off and reported back for team meeting Sunday evening.
Part of the 2 days of work last week was Navy prep, which was something I thought about during the bye week. I figured that would be something that they would be doing. Boston College, losers of 7 in a row, don't have a whole lot of hope against Notre Dame other than playing at home and playing pretty well this past weekend. Grayson James has popped back into the lineup. He was the guy that they replaced with Dylan Lonergan, the 5-star transfer from Alabama. Grayson gives them a little bit more mobility, Tim, but I just don't think that it's going to be quite enough against Notre Dame this weekend.
Well, as you mentioned, they play hard, and it was a compliment, and then also kind of a joke. That's the best I could say about them is they play hard, but they have played close games leading up to it. You mentioned Louisville might have been coming down a little bit from its massive win over Miami. They'll play hard against Notre Dame. They just used to have better gritty players at Boston College than they have right now. Now they just have some gritty players, and it's kind of that rivalry's been quelled a little bit, I think, because of the talent disparity. But what I found interesting looking at not the depth chart, but it's the longest list we've seen of questionable players this season. It's not guys you wouldn't be surprised. Like Logan Thomas is still on there for concussion. If you had a concussion for USC, I think you're just still in protocol right now. So whether that means anything or not, Matty Augustine newly on there for a concussion. Jordan Botello is on there for concussion protocol. That was not something we had any inkling of going in. It doesn't mean it happened for USC. It could have happened in one of those 2 games. And you still see Jaden Greathouse and Devonta Smith on the questionable list, and that has kept them out of games recently. Charles Jogisa, Gabriel Rubio, Billy Shrouth, of course, out.
We'll get more into Boston College in our podcast later today, and as we get into it later this week. But speaking of questionable, on Covers.com, I counted 20 Boston College players listed as questionable. So
that's questionable.
As questionable, yeah. So it's a long list for them as well. But JB, we got into a variety of things. Defensive line play that was talked about. Gabe Rubio still out. Marcus Freeman said he indicated that he thought he might be back before the end of the season, and then also talk about Jason Onye and his progress.
Yeah, for Notre Dame, the hope is with the Gabriel Rubio, maybe you get him back for that home finale against Syracuse to knock some rust off before going into December for what you hope will be another playoff run. And certainly Notre Dame is right back in a pretty enviable position to engineer another playoff run as long as it continues to handle business week after week. With Rubio, that's the elbow injury. I think a broken bone in the elbow there, so it's just a matter of getting that healed up. Similar with Billy Shrouth, a knee injury there. There's hope he could be back in 2 to 6 weeks was the timeline I was told, but erring on the backside of that time frame. But Jason Onye playing well. I found it very interesting that Marcus Freeman talked something about what we have mentioned on several podcasts, the rush lanes and the discipline, and he said that he's seeing guys trusting one another on the defensive line and staying in their lanes, and that's why the run numbers are down. That's why quarterbacks also are not able to extend plays and hurt Notre Dame more through the throw game.
And Tim, red zone offense, Marcus Freeman said something that we talked about on a podcast. You can acknowledge the fact that the opponent did something that you didn't expect. Yeah. But you can't use that as an excuse anymore. You've got to get it done inside the 5-yard line.
It's going to happen a lot. I mean, Al Golden had brought it up in the past, too, about the first drive of every game. The other team just always looked better on the first drive. He's like, we've never seen that before. And after a while, you're like, well, figure it out beforehand because it could cause a problem. Yeah, I asked him about self-scouting in the bye week and what if there's a common denominator. And I think we're going to get on this in our podcast as well in case Marcus Freeman wants to use this from our next podcast. I'd be curious to find out how many tight end targets there have been in the red zone. Now, Eli Reardon was the primary target on a pass C.J. Carr didn't throw, but that was not a tight end target. And I'm wondering how many other ones have been eschewed by C.J. Carr. No tight end touchdowns for Notre Dame. You knock me over with a feather if you said Eli Reardon's going to have a really good year but not have a touchdown after 7 weeks. That was kind of what I was looking forward to see is there something different they want to try to do this week in the red zone?
I think we have a question on that in the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast coming up. So we'll address that a little bit further. But, JB, I thought there was a good question asked about, the kicking issues. Is it injury related? Is it technique related? and Marcus Freeman said it's kind of both, but one leads into the other.
Yeah, the injury, and it's been ongoing for Noah Burnett, has caused him to compromise his technique. Now, it's my understanding that Noah Burnett received some additional treatment last week. We heard Marcus Freeman say today that he feels the health is there and much improved for Noah Burnett. If he's trusting the health of the leg, he's going to trust his technique more. And I think that's the key. I think that's what Marcus Freeman is driving down on. But yeah, Noah Burnett did get some extra work not extra work on the practice field, some extra work from Notre Dame's medical team last week that has Notre Dame not only optimistic for Burnett this week at Boston College, but optimistic that he can close out the regular season feeling much better and in position to handle Notre Dame's every down kicking duties, so to speak.
No extra work on the practice field for the kickers, right? That's what we've learned from Marty Biaggi. Maybe there was too much extra work.
It was an off week for the kickers.
It was an off week for him, yes.
Speaking of technique, Christian Gray's name was mentioned, and Marcus Freeman talked about what a tough individual he is, and I think that he's proven that over and over again, especially in the last game against USC and both times that he's played against USC in the last couple of years. But again, another situation where we knew he's been a little bit banged up, and Marcus Freeman had mentioned that his technique was a little bit off. Again, a little bit tied to some of the physical ailments that he's had to deal with.
And I just think constant usage. It would be, and I'm a little surprised by this. It would be invaluable if you could get Mark Zachary in for 8 plays for Christian Gray, because we know that he was the backup field corner, Mark Zachary. We know that Leonard Moore had to go play against Mekhi Lemon in the slot, which put Christian Gray at the boundary, and then Dallas Golden started at the field corner. But at some point, Mark Zachary was ahead of Dallas Golden at field corner. So it seems at some point, now that you get back, you might have 4 guys, especially going into the Boston College game. Navy's different. You maybe get Christian Gray a little bit of rest against some of these teams where he is not playing 80 snaps a game. You look at him every once in a while, he just does not look like he runs the whole game through. Sometimes he looks fine, sometimes he is really laboring.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, especially when you're playing against the receivers that USC throws out there. They aren't as deep this year, but I mean, they're coming at you, no doubt about it. And, John, tying into what you said about Notre Dame not giving up the explosives defensively, they're plugging those holes. Why is Notre Dame running the football with the authority that they're running now? Some of those misfits by the offensive linemen are now fits. And when you have 2 running backs like Notre Dame has in Price and Love, you've got a whole bunch of room to maneuver.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman talked today. He was asked about where he assessed this team's identity, basically at the 2/3 mark of the season. Not quite 2/3 of the way there, but very close. And he said, look, we're always going to be an O-line and D-line driven team, and we've shown more of that in recent weeks. And that game against USC was quintessential O-line and D-line driven, especially the O-line, what they did for 306 rushing yards. We hadn't seen anybody do that to this USC defense this year, especially coming off of USC's win before that against Michigan, where they really controlled the line of scrimmage. So that was noteworthy, and that gives you an idea that they're going to be able to plug Sullivan Absher in there, that Marcus Freeman professing his confidence in Sully today. And I think with 2 weeks to prepare, you really are optimistic that he will have a seamless transition there. You also don't get the best opponent in the world to get your first start and try to get some things done there to continue to do some things for Absher and the Notre Dame offensive line. So I do think that's significant. I do think that unit is especially playing with much greater confidence than we saw the first month of the season.
One of the issues that Notre Dame is dealing with on the practice field is so many of their backup offensive linemen are banged up that they've had to turn to some defensive linemen to be part of the show team, which is always critical during the course of a week preparing for an opponent. We weren't aware of that, but Tim, there's some defensive linemen there have been doing a little double duty on the show team for the offensive line.
Yeah, you mentioned Brendan Vernon switching over to the offense. I do wonder if that had anything to do with the Navy preparation for flipping over to the show team. But hearing that Sean Sevillano and Armel Mukum, well, they're a show team for defense, though, right? Mukum and Sevillano, they do get in games too. I mean, they're stacking that scout team unit pretty strongly. I want to mention one thing about the offensive line. You're actually on starter number 9 right now if you include Charles Jagisa. Like last year, they made it to 10. And
Sounds like last year.
It took all of January to get to 10. You're on number 9 without Ashton Craig, Billy Schrouth, technically Jagisa. Otting is the 9th guy in. At some point here, the next guy that gets hurt, you're going to be really debuting somebody new. It's going to be like last year, you were still we just bring back in Sam Pendleton, bring back in Rocco Spindler. It's going to be a new guy, the next guy that goes down.
They need to stay healthy there. And finally, wrapping up, the question was asked by Pete Sampson about Brian Kelly. Of course, as everybody knows now, Brian Kelly has been relieved of his duties at LSU, and Marcus Freeman was asked about, just your thoughts on, and he was asked earlier when the coaching changes started happening throughout college football, what his thoughts were. And as always, Marcus Freeman, very thoughtful about the opportunity that he is presented with as a head coach of Notre Dame. And the word that he used, of course, is very grateful.
Yeah, grateful, gratitude. There's a great coincidence there. I don't know, irony, coincidence, whatever. But let's not forget the fact that Marcus Freeman ultimately picked Notre Dame over LSU 5 years ago when that was going down. And he had a very lucrative offer from LSU, and he was telling some folks in Cincinnati that he was leaving, and he thought he was going to take the LSU job and go work for Ed Orgeron. And then Brian Kelly and Notre Dame refused to be told no and won it over with the Notre Dame atmosphere and the Notre Dame mystique and the Notre Dame class, I think, is what really carried the day 5 years ago. But a lot to unpack, and we're going to talk about it more on the podcast. But really interesting, that's not been lost on me in recent days, is that Marcus Freeman almost ended up at LSU, came to Notre Dame. Now he's arguably the single most popular coach in college football. I would contend it's Marcus Freeman and Kirby Smart and everybody else, and not really close.
Tim, final thought?
I just think that my main question was Navy prep. Is it happening? When Marcus Freeman offers Navy prep is happening ahead of time, he's a confident coach. That's usually kept on the down low, and you find out, well, we've been working on this for 4 months, but this is a situation where, hey, that is the next big game. He'll have Notre Dame focused because of the bye week. I do think the bye week helps Notre Dame going into this Boston College game. You mentioned them playing well against Louisville and Louisville coming down a little. I think these 7 days, not off, but 7 days off from not playing in there is going to help coming after that USC game. It was as emotional a win for Notre Dame, I think, as they've had since last January, obviously.
That's it for Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis, brought to you by the RVMH Hall of Fame in the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana.